What is going on, Fantasy Alarm Nation? My name is Justin Fensterman, along with Ryan Hallam. Once again, it's Fantasy Alarm Sports Talk. And Ryan, man, running back scramble this close to the start of the season, that's what we call not ideal in our world.
No, I was getting ready for some baseball projections this morning when the old notification came over the cell phone. I'm like, well, I guess baseball takes a backseat for a little while because we have to do some changes to the Fantasy Alarm projections and depth charts and everything else as the Jaguars said bye-bye to Leonard Fournette, 10 days before the season starts?
Yep, that's right. So for all of you that thought that Leonard Fournette, he was going to get all the carries, they were going to run him into the ground. Nope, instead they said leave the ground immediately. So he is now waived. And immediately, Hallam, as a fantasy player, a lot comes to mind here, especially if you own Leonard Fournette. Do you have any shares of him? Because I have a big fat zero when it comes to Fournette shares.
I am in so many leagues. Unfortunately, I am not sure yet. If I do, it's very little. And if I do, it was one of those ones where you kind of don't really like it, but it's the only thing that made sense at the time. So he's definitely not my number one back anywhere. I'm sure there's one in there somewhere. But, he's going to land somewhere. It likely isn't going to be as good of a situation as Jacksonville, where he at least seemed to get the lion's share of the carries. I'm sure it wasn't going to be quite what it was last year, but he was still going to be the man. There's very few opportunities out there left at this point to be the man. So wherever he lands, it's at least in the beginning is going to hurt his value. Can he work his way back into a workhorse situation somewhere else? Sure. I mean, he's not going to get a good contract wherever he goes. It's probably going to be, for the 1 year. So he's certainly going to try to prove it in 2020. So you have to figure he's going to be motivated. It's just a matter of opportunities, which, is really a lot of times what matters in fantasy football.
Now, let's freeze the news cycle for just a second. Let's say we're drafting tonight. Okay, you can unfreeze. Okay, well, let's be careful here, Hallam, okay? You don't have to freeze all the time. You never know. It's hard to tell if you're having tech issues or not, Hallam. Just play the game.
My mother always told me I'd freeze if I did this with my face.
See, my mother told me that too, and then I read somewhere that it was a big lie.
It is a big lie. Look.
See, I used to make the funny face like this.
Well, you do kind of still make that when you do your gun.
Yeah, it's more of a bigger smile. But anyway, let's get back to Leonard Fournette at this point.
All right.
We have drafts tonight. Where are you even? I mean, I wasn't drafting this guy to begin with anyway, so I'm safe. I'm okay. But for those that are targeting him, still, how exactly does he fall? I feel like you almost have to just keep him out in fantasy purgatory until he gets signed somewhere, because I'm not paying second-round pick. He'll drop to at least the third round. I don't want to pay a third round with all this uncertainty that we're facing already, Ryan.
No, and we've talked multiple weeks about the running backs here and the uncertainty, especially after you get to round 3. If you're drafting tonight, I think this is one of the ones where you just say, go ahead, somebody else do it. Let someone else take the risk. There's enough guys even in that area where he might be going third. Maybe he falls to the fourth right now with no team. Maybe farther. I'm not sure. But if it's that third, fourth range, that's one where I'm going to just let someone else take the risk. And
Ryan, it's going to be harder in auctions. Snake, it'll be a lot easier to pass him. But when he's brought to the table and you see those single-digit bids slowing down and you're like, wow, you could tell you're going to get good value if you're on this guy, but you don't know where he's going to land. I mean, what would it take? What would the price have to be for you to invest in him? Because you would think everyone has a price, but this is a situation right now.
I would think probably around 15 is the number that's coming to my head right off the top. I mean, that's not a good running back price. And like I said, I mean, he's probably not going to end up in the best situation. There are a few out there that could be okay for him. But I mean, he's going to be motivated. And two, he's actually not bad when he's healthy. He's actually pretty solid. He can catch passes out of the backfield. He's the goal line guy. He's kind of the all-purpose back when he's on the field. So I think 15 is a reasonable value. We'll see what happens. If I'm drafting on Wednesday, I don't know, doing an auction, so I'm not sure if he'll be signed by then. I assume he's going to find a home fairly soon. So I would think definitely by the weekend. So, it's risk, but I think at the right price, he's definitely worth a shot.
Well, then let's talk about potential homes for Leonard Fournette, who was waived by Jacksonville earlier today. And I was actually looking because, of course, Brian, we got to have fun. We're all about wagering, whether it's fantasyalarm.com or wageralarm.com. We got to look at the lines as soon as something like this happens. That's part of the fun. So looking at possible homes, and in Vegas, I was seeing some lines earlier. Chicago is the favorite. And this was about a few hours ago, so things can change on a moment's notice. But Chicago, now let's talk about them. Right now, the timetable for Montgomery is 2 to 4 weeks. Maybe we're in the 1 to 3 weeks. Keyword timetable. Because now I'm starting to read more and more that he could miss a few weeks into the season while some are like, it's okay, he'll be back by week 1. So, Ryan, thinking all of that and taking it all into consideration, do you think that this could be a potential marriage, Chicago and Leonard Fournette?
It's possible. With the injury to Montgomery, it certainly didn't turn out to be as bad as originally thought. Of course, the world thought, ACL immediately. Everybody had him out for the year. His career was over. And then it was like 4 weeks, like you said. So be a little bit of a surprise, but not a shocker. I don't know if that's the best place for him. The Bears really struggled to run the ball last year. I'm not sure they're going to be any better at it this year. I drafted David Montgomery a lot, as you know, hoping that they would be able to run the ball better this year. It would be a death nail for Montgomery for sure, unless Fournette really just came in and flopped. So I am personally hoping that that's not the landing spot, but it's not a bad guess.
Yeah, by the way, I'll just say this right now. If you're in a draft and you're worried that the Bears are going to sign him, I'm still okay with the value I'm likely going to get on Tariq Cohen. So I'm fine with that anyway. I'm not at that point. If he's there in that 9th, 10th round area, I'm still okay with him because he's going to be his own separate entity at that point. Catch a few passes. You'll need him as a bridge player for bye weeks, maybe 1 or 2 weeks. That's it. And if he does anything better, you view it as an added bonus. So that's
Absolutely.
how you would. And that's how I would handle this situation because the thing is, Hallam, I'm not going to force myself into liking players all of a sudden that I didn't like to begin with, especially running backs. And I have 0 shares of both Montgomery and Fournette. So if I do get a little bit intrigued, that's the direction I go. So in going after maybe a Cohen, but I mean, if that happens, then he becomes almost like a dollar value running back, and that's pretty decent value there. So that's how I'm viewing Cohen if they do sign Fournette. Now let's move on to a couple of other teams that could use a little bit of help. According to Vegas, seeing that there is money on New England and Tampa Bay. So let's start with New England because it just seems like we're playing musical chairs with this team all month long. It's one guy, it's another guy. It's Harris, and then it's Lamar Miller. We're getting Lamar Miller. Nope. Is he healthy? Is he not healthy? Rex Burkhead, they still have him. Sony Michel, will he be back? Won't he be back? Here's James White, but he's his own separate standalone back in the passing game. So do you think that Leonard Fournette could land in New England?
I definitely think that's a possibility. That was one of the few teams that I had in mind when we started. It seems like the kind of thing Belichick loves. I mean, a team kind of gives up on a guy maybe before they should have. Maybe it's for, off the field issues. They've done it before with Randy Moss. They did it before with Corey Dillon. And these guys come in and thrive under here. Sony Michel, I've read a lot of good reports about him today. Looks like he'll at least be ready for the first week of the season. Damian Harris, some good reports as well. But I wouldn't put it past Belichick to put all these guys on the bench if someone like Fournette becomes available. I think that's a real possibility that's a team that he goes to, and that would be one of the two in my mind of the best places he could land.
Oh, wow. So at this point, if you're thinking that it's possible and you're drafting tonight, I know you're drafting in a couple of days, we should have a result by then, but we don't know how long it's going to take. So thinking that he could go to the Patriots, does it turn you off to any other options besides any of the running backs? Does it turn you off to James White at all, even before we leave running backs?
No, I mean, because I think, like you said with Cohen, it's the same thing with White. He's going to have his role, whether Fournette is there or not. I mean, I said that Fournette is a solid pass-catching back, which is true, but I don't think that if he was there, all of a sudden James White would stop catching passes. I mean, he's a guy who's been on the team a long time. I know Tom Brady is not there anymore, so things will be a little bit different. But White has proven himself year after year to be a good, reliable target, a guy that can carry the ball, 4 to 7 times a game and give you some production. So I don't think that would be bad for James White if Fournette was there. It would absolutely destroy Sony Michel and Damian Harris if he does, though.
It absolutely would, especially after, like you said, you're all of a sudden, it didn't seem like Sony Michel was going to be ready for week one. I saw him drop to the last round in a decent amount of drafts that I was following.
People hate him, and I don't really understand.
Well,
I know he's not great.
I'll tell you why I don't like him, but not for fantasy. Why I don't like him. He's just so boring of a back. He doesn't really have much bust. He's the up-the-middle guy. That's all it is. It's
he scores like 8 touchdowns a year.
And that's fine, and I'm fine with that. He's just not fun. Whenever I'm watching him, I'm like, how is this guy going to make weight for me when it comes to my fantasy production? And I hate feeling like that. However, value is value, and I'm not turning away from, and this is forgetting whether or not Fournette will appear there or not, I'm not turning away 10th round and beyond value for Sony Michel at this point with this whole confusing backfield.
Yeah, I think at that point he's definitely worth it. He's proven himself. And again, like you said, not exciting, not sexy. He's not going to blast one for 80 yards and a touchdown. That's not his game. But they continue to give him carries by the goal line. Maybe he averages 3.5 yards a carry, but he's going to give you 60 yards and a touchdown for a decent amount. He doesn't really catch any passes at all, maybe like 5 all season. So yeah, he's not a 5th round guy. He is like an 8th or 9th round guy. But at that spot, at this point, he's become a flex at best, maybe a bye week guy. But to me, he always still has value. If he's healthy, and they don't have a back as like Fournette, I think he's going to have value. If Fournette doesn't go there, I think Damian Harris is going to have a decent season, but I think Michel will still beat him as far as fantasy production.
Man, it must suck to be drafting tonight, Ryan. I'll tell you that much. But look, this is not your fault. This is the cycle, the news cycle. We've seen this happen a ton to us before, especially with holdouts, which we'll get to. Right now, talking about some teams where Leonard Fournette could land and how it can impact other options that we're looking to draft. And that's the problem, the fear of the unknown. That's going to impact some of you, but that's why you get the Fantasy Alarm Draft Guide, fantasyalarm.com/NFL Draft Guide. That's why. Because when this kind of stuff happens, variable change comes in many different forms. You always have to be on your toes. That's why you have our guide. That's why you have Ryan Hallam. That's why you have me. That's why you have our FA staff, because we are here for you during these crazy tornado fantasy times, Ryan.
Absolutely. It's we love having everyone in the chat rooms, which are always active and fun every day. Everyone really gets along in there. We are able to give out a lot of good information, and everyone coming to watching these and reading the articles. And yeah, we are committed as a team to hit the news first and give you the best information as fast as we possibly can.
Yes. Now let's try to do our best with this run game, because just when you think it can't get any more confusing, let's bring in Tampa. Another team which I've had no read on, especially now with it seemed all of a sudden, okay, Ronald Jones breaking away from the pack. Loved his ADP, by the way. 5th, 6th round for this guy at that point, okay. I was unsure for a while, so I was kind of staying away. But if I go very receiver heavy to start, let's say I grab a running back in the 1st round and then grab a bunch of receivers after maybe my next 4 rounds or so, I go receiver, maybe with a tight end mixed in. Okay, I would have gone Ronald Jones after that. Now he's got this foot injury. And with Keyshawn Vaughn having his own issues, I mean, Leonard Fournette, could he end up with Brady and Gronk?
That's another possibility. I don't know what that would do. I guess it would be, curtains for. It seems to be curtains for Vaughn anyway. Like I read, he could just be a kick returner at this point. So this guy that we all loved around draft time, his stock just continues to plummet. I've never really been in love with Ronald Jones. I think we talked about him before. He couldn't, get out from behind Peyton Barber, for God's sakes, and he's barely on an NFL roster now. So I didn't really see Ronald Jones being a great option this year. I think Fournette would really push him out. I think, Jones, when healthy, would be pushed to a single carry a game kind of guy, and Fournette has a chance there also to have a pretty expansive role.
Let me ask you something, because you brought something to my attention which we should absolutely talk about, because especially with no preseason games, it's hard at this time anyway to read through all of the fluff when it comes to news headlines regarding these players that we're looking to draft, camp reports, and all of that. You brought up what you saw about Vaughn working with special teams. And I have to ask you, when you see a headline that comes out that all of a sudden let's say a rookie running back or a rookie wide receiver is going to be working a little bit more with special teams. Is that a warning sign for you? And has it been that way? Because you've been a fantasy analyst for over a decade, and it's hard to figure out what news is real versus what is clickbait. So when you see a report like that, does the red flag pop up for you?
Yeah, I mean, Bruce Arians is kind of a weird coach to me. He's said some things in the past that didn't necessarily come to fruition. So it sucks so bad without preseason. Like, we have nothing concrete to go on. But, you know, when Vaughn was drafted, everyone was kind of like 60-40 Vaughn over Jones. And the news has just continued to get worse and worse and worse and worse for him. And yeah, when you get to the point where he's on special teams, that's a pretty big red flag to me. If you're saying they're splitting carries 50-50, fine. You know, even if Jones, you expect to be the guy, all right. It's bad, but we'll take that with a grain of salt. He's in special teams. That's pretty bad. Like, now Keyshawn Vaughn to me is toast at this point. Maybe a last round flyer and hope, but I mean, if he came in to maybe be the guy and now he's returning kicks, that does not give me exactly a big vote of confidence for the kid.
No, and with this entire run game, I don't know what to expect. When Jones went down, I took him off the target list, and now I am looking for someone else in that area, which is becoming harder and harder. Hallam, let's talk about the Washington football team, because they have their own situations. No more Geist there, so we're looking at a bunch of people. It seems like everything with Love is now faded with all of the hype around him. You also have Adrian Peterson still there. You have Peyton Barber there. I mean, do you think that this could be a landing spot for Leonard Fournette?
That's the jackpot spot for me, is Washington. You know, their offensive line isn't that great. Their passing game isn't that great. But I think this is the shot for him to have the closest thing to his Jacksonville role, I think, is in Washington. I know they're trying to do a lot of image rehab there this year. So maybe taking a disgruntled guy might not be the best choice. But
I don't know about that.
But you know what? He's shown he can still play. So a lot of things get better when you're winning or when you're producing. So I won't be the least bit surprised if Washington gives him a shot. That, to me, like I said, is number one. Patriots would probably be number two as far as preferred spots for me for Fournette.
You don't think that Adrian Peterson being there is a selling point to him at all, right?
I wouldn't think so. I mean, there's a selling point in that I can beat this old ass man out for the job. That right. Kind of selling point, but not, you know, as far as a mentor or friendship or anything.
Right. Mentorship, something that's very important in sports, something we don't really talk about too much. But hey, I wonder, you're one of the greatest running backs of all time. You have a chance to, and look at the Washington football team offense. Not much there.
Yeah.
So he can easily come in and dominate carries, and it really not impact their build. That's the thing. Yep. That makes sense. Wow. So if you're looking at the odds right there, I mean, last I saw for Washington plus 375. So very interesting to sign Leonard Fournette. All right, Hallam, let's talk about the Jaguars. No more Leonard Fournette. I mean, you got Chris Thompson, Ozigbo. That's Rykel Armstead, who right now seems to be the front man. I mean, how are you even handling this run game if you have a draft tonight?
It was funny when I was going over our projections this morning, when I was taking Fournette out of them. I was like, where do I put all of this production between these three guys, who none of which have any real? Well, Thompson had some success in the football, but not as a reliable guy. He's a pass catcher, and let's face it, he hasn't exactly been able to stay healthy very often. So while he has some PPR value, he's an end of the draft guy at best to me in PPR leagues. I don't really see him being awesome. Rykel Armstead, to me, I mean, he's coming off COVID, which I guess he's okay, and we still do have 10, 12 days before the season starts. But he missed a lot of camp, so I think he's going to be a little step behind, which I think right now puts Divine Ozigbo in the front runner's chair for me personally. He had a pretty decent college career at Nebraska, undrafted, but he's got some burst. He's the speed guy. Armstead is a little bit of the bigger back. They weigh about the same, but Armstead is Ozigbo is like 3 or 4 inches taller, and he's got some speed where Armstead might be more of the goal line guy. But this is going to be a situation we talked about a couple weeks ago with the committee backs. This is a situation kind of like Christian McCaffrey, where not one person's going to come in and take the Fournette role. I don't see that happening. They don't have that guy on this roster. I think Thompson's going to catch some passes. I think Armstead will probably get some carries and some goal line stuff. And I think Ozigbo's going to get double-digit carries a game, at least to start, unless they bring in someone else, which at this point is really late to do. I think we're looking for a real big running back committee here in Jacksonville, and I don't think any of them warrant anything before a 12th or 13th round pick.
I was going to add, that was my next question, when you were going to look to draft them. But we just don't know. And when you don't know, you don't always have, sometimes the best shot, the shot you're not taking. And that is a situation where you can play the guessing game. You want to spend your last few draft picks on both of these guys or 2 of the 3. You want to go with Armstead and Thompson or Ozigbo and one of the 2? You can. But again, those are 2 picks right there, and if they bring someone in or even make a trade of some kind, that right there brings them back to irrelevancy, and that is a big problem. And that's why, Hallam, I'm glad you didn't all of a sudden look at everything like someone who is all into the hype with everyone and just be like, you got to draft this guy in the 6th, 7th, 8th round immediately, when you don't really know anything about the player. We didn't see a lot of Armstead last year.
No. When we did, wasn't that great. So, of course, everyone this morning was, all right, Armstead season. Like, calm down, Oprah. I mean, he didn't do anything last year. There's a reason he never got in the field. I know Fournette's a great back, but if he was halfway decent, he would have been on the field longer. So it just doesn't always mean because someone's gone that someone else steps up. And especially in the NFL, that's the way it's going more and more, is more committee backs and that kind of thing. You're seeing a lot fewer workhorses. Even the good guys, like even a guy like Miles Sanders, who everyone loves, a late first-round pick, he's not getting all the carries in Philadelphia. He's going to do the most with them out of anyone on the team, but it's not like he's going to sit there and get 25 carries and 8 targets. It's just not the way the league works anymore. And, on August 31st, when a past All-Pro has been cut, not one person to me is coming in and taking this job.
Yeah, we can talk about the first round and how much of a mess it is at this point, Ryan. And, before we leave the Fournette situation, I mean, any other teams that come to mind that can use them? I mean, we've talked about fantasy impact of a lot of teams right now, talked about what to do even when it came to the Jaguars. But, we're kind of in I hate to say holding pattern, but when it comes to anything regarding that, we just have to be careful. And especially, I think the one lesson is when you're looking at the teams like the Bears and the Patriots especially, and even Washington, you got to be careful when drafting those backs. The good thing about Washington is Adrian Peterson hasn't gone up that much. Have you seen him really start to move on up? Because I've seen him move up a little bit, as we could expect, but him and Gibson, who by the way, I failed to mention Gibson before, the Enigma, who could help out at both in the run game and passing game as well. So with that, I mean, that's really the big thing right now. Gibson, whether or not I take a later shot on him or try to wait it out with him. Outside of that, I wasn't really targeting David Montgomery or anything like that, because once he signs, that's going to impact the entire position when it comes to ADP.
Yeah, and like I said, I think we'll see it kind of soon. A couple long shots, I think. Everyone talks about Philadelphia. They thought was going to bring in another back to kind of complement Miles Sanders. I'd be surprised if they went someone of this caliber. I think that would.
They've got problems there right now, man. They got Rieger hurt. They can't escape the injuries, dude.
Yeah, they don't. If this is a running back though, they need wide receivers. That would be a long shot, but it wouldn't completely shock me. And the other one is the Chargers. Because I mean, Austin Eckler has never really carried the load as a every down back, and he's going to be asked to do an awful lot. They had Melvin Gordon last year, a type of guy kind of like Fournette. So if they brought him in, I wouldn't be shocked. I don't expect them to go to either of those two places, but those are two more that at least I can see some sense.
Man, I mean, what about? It's funny. I see some other odds on here too. I mean, it's funny with Seattle. I can't see. I mean, do you see Seattle at all?
No, I mean, Carson got hurt at the end of last year, but everything is pointing to him being okay. They brought in Carlos Hyde. Rashad Penny should come back at some point. They drafted DJ Dallas. Yeah. I would be kind of surprised if Carson was more injured, like if he was set to miss some time, kind of like a Montgomery situation, maybe. But that would be a kind of a long shot to me.
Right. Let's talk about another issue going on when it comes to early draft picks. Alvin Kamara has missed the last 3 days, unexcused, by the way. And according to Adam Schefter, which we saw in reports earlier, it could be contract related. Just when we think we're getting over the contract stuff, we get pulled back in again. Now you've got a situation, Ryan, where, because we don't have resolutions yet, we think we're good and safe with Dalvin Cook. At least I am feeling pretty safe about it. But Joe Mixon and now potentially Alvin Kamara, you have a draft tonight, bud. What are you doing? Because I would love to take Kamara in that 4th spot, and I still kind of want to, but man, it's hard when you start to see the contract news come into play again.
Yeah, especially this close to the season, because the thing with Cook, where I thought he had no leverage, was the last CBA kind of really pained these guys if they held out of camp. Well, camp is over in about 5 days, so I'm not sure what the financial penalties would be if he just doesn't play, besides obviously missing game checks. So I don't know if that maybe takes some of the leverage away from the teams. But he certainly hasn't been vocal about it. He hasn't really played it out in the media, which is good. Neither guy has. So I would think if I'm drafting tonight, I'm not changing my draft position on him or Mixon. I figure these teams get it worked out. I doubt they give him a new contract on August 31st. But some sort of promise or something that they're going to work out with the guys. I'd be surprised if either one misses any game time.
Yeah, I'm going to be interested to see just over the next few days, and I'm going to start looking at, because I do the ADP TV videos on fantasyalarm.com. Over the next few days, I'm going to be just monitoring Latavius Murray's stock and seeing if it goes up a little bit, even a round or so, because people get very paranoid, Ryan, and that's the problem. With me, if I'm put in that position tonight, and fortunately for me, I'm not, but could happen tomorrow. I'm actually starting a slow draft tomorrow. I have the 6th pick, and it's ready for this, Ryan? It's in a guillotine league. So that right there, I can't finish with a low score week 1, or else my season's done just like that. Lowest score gets eliminated every week. I don't want to be that guy. And I'm in Alvin Kamara territory at 6 overall, especially now. So I'll be watching that. But with Cook, I've been recommending Cook. I've answered a lot of questions on Twitter regarding Cook, and I've been recommending Cook. I'm not fearing that. Joe Mixon, very quickly, where are you looking at drafting Joe Mixon? Because I'm having trouble pinpointing him. He hasn't been an active target of mine. Resolution happens, all of a sudden I'm sitting there in around that, 9 through 12 area, big decisions to make.
Yeah, he's someone that I feel gets a little overrated out there in fantasy world. I've seen him go as high as 6, which I can't swallow at all. He didn't score a touchdown until I don't think it was like week 10 last year. The team should be better. Hopefully Joe Burrow, brings a little bit of a moxie from LSU and gets this offense straightened out a little bit. But other than having a rookie quarterback, Andy Dalton was never bad. It wasn't like they had a garbage quarterback until, they benched him last year. But Mixon is to me, very, very streaky, very inconsistent. I'd say I could see doing it in the 10, 11, 12 spot. But he's really never really been a guy that I've been on either. The team's just, the line's not that great. I don't find him to be that spectacular. I'd rather have a guy like Nick Chubb or somewhere along those lines than Mixon myself, but I know a lot of people love him.
Where do you put Josh Jacobs in all this?
Here's a guy I do like. So I could take him 9. I'd take him in that 9 to 11 range. Definitely.
I was going to ask you if he moves up a few more picks in light of this Kamara news, because there's not a lot of safety on the board anymore. And yes, I know he didn't get a lot of receptions last year, and the plan is to get him a little bit more involved in that aspect of the Raiders game. But if you're just looking, and I thought maybe Howard Bender and I could do this on Wednesday as a fun activity, looking over the first 2 rounds. We'll be back for that on Fantasy Alarm Sports Talk. But Now, when you're looking on the board, Ryan, Josh Jacobs looking pretty safe, and I like that during COVID times.
Absolutely, and I love the guy. I think he really proved a lot last year. Got some banged up, so it's a bit of a concern in his rookie season. But he ran hard, had a little bit of burst. Definitely can catch the ball. Wasn't really given as much opportunity to last year. And like you said, the coaches are saying that they could easily see him doubling his receptions. Again, is that coach talk? We'll find out. I like to think that it's true. I have a lot of Josh Jacobs this year because I've been in the back half of drafts all over the place, and he's been a guy that I will cherry pick every single time. So I could even, off the top of my head, I could pick him as high as 8, but definitely someone that I'm actively targeting if I'm in that second half of the first round.
His goal for the season is to catch 60 passes. And I said, let's slow down, Speed Racer. Let's slow down a little bit.
That would be great.
Look, I'm looking for 30 to 40, and I view that as a success. He's going to be fed a ton. There's no doubt about that. So with that, Ryan, sometimes not always bad to be bored and safe. It's how you can win titles, especially when building depth. He is Ryan Hallam at Fighting Chance. I am Justin Fensterman at Fensty Sports all week long, every single day on fantasyalarm.com. You get Fantasy Alarm Sports Talk with our staff, different members of our staff. Ryan, as always, a lot of fun. You make Mondays even better.
Is it a half hour already? Wow, that goes fast.
It's too easy, man. It's too easy.
Great times always. Hope we're doing it again next Monday, Fensty.
Yes. If John and Pemba allows us to once again. So we'll have to be nice to John. That's why we will thank John and Pemba, who is producing this live stream for Hallam. I'm Fensty. Good luck. The family is always with you, even through these crazy times. No matter what boulders come in our way, we will barrel through them. That is what we do, and we do it together as one. Good luck in your drafts.